Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take, well, usually a massive stack of sources and boil it all down to the critical stuff you need.
Yeah, the things that help you sound smart, but also, actually be informed.
Exactly. And today, it's not just any stack. We're looking at what feels like the definitive rule book for, well, for how big business changes are supposed to happen.
That's right. Our source material today is all built around these foundational concepts you'd find in, like, serious business analysis certifications. We're pulling out the hard-won wisdom, the stuff that stops massive projects from just completely failing.
That's the mission today, right? We're not doing test prep here.
No, no.
You listening are getting the strategic shortcut. We're aiming to surgically extract, let's say, 10 core knowledge nuggets. These define the whole life cycle,
From kicking off a project right through to proving it delivered value.
giving you that immediate grasp of the logic behind these huge, sometimes multi-million-dollar initiatives.
Exactly. And if you get these concepts, you really understand the life cycle of, well, value creation. It's knowing the difference between a project that just, launches some software and one that fundamentally changes how the business operates. For the better, hopefully.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Where do we start? Maybe with the fundamental principles,
Yeah.
the rules of the game.
Sounds good. Let's start there.
Okay, so our first nugget. It tackles something you see in almost every high-pressure project, doesn't it? This temptation to, well, cut corners on documentation.
Ah, yes. The classic.
So the scenario is, a business analyst is insisting on establishing full requirement traceability, tracking every single confirmed requirement back to its original business objective and doing it early on.
Right. Very early.
Why is that insistence so critical? Why fight for that?
Well, it's all about upholding a core principle. The principle of feasible contributing requirements. That traceability is basically your main defense against scope creep and, frankly, wasted effort.
But hang on, practically speaking, if the project's moving super fast, wouldn't it just be easier to track it all later? Once things have settled down a bit.
See, that's the trap.
Yeah.
Absolutely not easier in the long run. The really high cost of failure. It comes from building something that doesn't actually line up with the strategic goals.
Okay.
So early traceability, it ensures two things right away. First, is this requirement technically practical? Is it feasible?
Right.
And second, does it directly connect to a clear business need? Does it guarantee contribution? If you can't trace it back,
Then what?
then you might be building something redundant or maybe something the business never actually asked for in the first place. And that's how projects sink.
Okay, so that reframes traceability. It's really risk management, isn't it? Not just boring documentation.
Precisely. Foundational risk management.
Got it. Okay, let's zoom out a bit from the internal project stuff to the external world. Our second nugget looks at how that outside environment affects whether a project is even viable, and it uses a great, really current example.
Yeah, the retailer scenario is perfect here. They're thinking about using drone delivery.
Okay.
Now, they already know the tech works, more or less, and the laws are generally okay. But what they're really assessing now is public tolerance,
Right.
for drone noise and also customer preference. Do people even want drones dropping packages?
Right. So the question is, using that PESTLE framework, what factor does evaluating that social acceptance fall under?
That is definitely sociocultural.
Yeah.
And what's interesting here is understanding the scope of PESTLE, right? Political, economic,
Sociocultural, technological.
legal and environmental. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the people in your target market think these loud delivery drones are like an unacceptable invasion of privacy.
And the project's dead in the water.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how brilliant the technology is. You're evaluating behaviors, beliefs, attitudes. It's the pure social landscape.
Makes sense. And that leads perfectly into the next big question. How do we actually define the reason for doing the project anyway? The value.
Yeah, if we're spending all this money and effort.
We need clear targets, measurable ones. So nugget 3 gets into this distinction between tangible versus intangible benefits, specifically within a business case.
Right. And when analysts are putting together that business case, they have to be, well, really rigorous about separating these two. Because tangible benefits, they're often the reason the investment actually gets the green light.
Okay, so give us the hard number example from the source material. What does a quantifiable, really tangible benefit look like?
The clear-cut example they use is annual cost savings of $20,000 due to reduced manual operation errors.
Yeah.
You'd be able to put a solid number on it. That's the real dividing line.
Right, a dollar figure. So if a benefit is listed as, say, improved staff skills, Or maybe enhanced corporate brand awareness. Those are good things, but
They don't count as tangible.
yeah.
Exactly. Those are definitely valuable, often very valuable intangible benefits, but they're incredibly hard to measure precisely or to convert directly into, guaranteed savings you can see on the balance sheet. Tangible means it has to be financially or numerically quantifiable. It's the provable return on investment.
Got it. Tangible equals countable, basically.
Pretty much.
Okay, shifting gears slightly to nugget 4. Once we've defined that high-level value, how do we track if we're actually achieving it? This is about the difference between a critical success factor, a CSF, and a key performance indicator, a KPI. What distinguishes them?
Yeah, this distinction is really helpful for managing focus, for not getting lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
CSFs, they are the high-level goal areas, the places where the business absolutely must perform well to achieve its overall mission.
Okay, high level.
And they're often expressed as these broad action phrases.
Like the example, provide an excellent customer experience. That sounds like a CSF. It's the general direction.
That's the map, exactly.
Yeah.
CSFs define those essential areas of success. They give you the strategic direction.
Okay, so that's the what. What about KPIs then?
Right. The KPIs come next. Things like maintain a 99% accuracy rate or handle 90% of inquiries within 5 minutes. These are the specific measurable metrics you use later on to actually gauge if you're succeeding in those high-level CSF areas.
Okay. So CSFs are the broad goals, and KPIs are the how much, the specific measurements.
You got it. CSFs guide which KPIs you need to track.
Right. Now we get into what feels like the really messy part of execution, dealing with actual people, human complexity.
The fun part.
Nugget 5 is all about pulling together all those different views. We know the BCS Business Analysis Process Model, the BAPM. It has a specific stage just for acquiring and synthesizing stakeholder perspectives. Which stage is that?
That would be the consider perspective stage. And it's crucial because it explicitly acknowledges that when you walk into a big organization, stakeholders rarely agree on the core problem.
Let alone the solution.
Exactly, let alone the solution.
And okay, to handle this inherent conflict, the sources mention a key technique, soft systems methodology, SSM. It sounds, well, pretty academic.
It can sound that way, yeah.
What does it actually do? How does it help reconcile these conflicting objectives?
Well, SSM recognizes that just forcing a compromise often doesn't really work long-term.
Right. People aren't really bought in.
No. So instead, it works by building this shared conceptual model of the whole situation. It tries to get everyone to agree on what the system needs to be from their own viewpoint first.
Okay.
And then it looks for the maximum feasible common ground between all those views. It's about acknowledging and integrating different, sometimes totally opposing worldviews before you try and define the final solution. It really helps with getting political buy-in later.
That makes sense. You map out the conflict before trying to solve it.
Precisely.
Which leads us straight into nugget 6,
Mhm.
actually managing those tricky stakeholder relationships. If you're using the classic power interest grid,
Yep. 2 by 2.
what's the recommended strategy for those stakeholders who have low power but high interest? You know, the ones who care a lot, but they can't actually approve or block anything major.
This group, it's a classic political balancing act, this one. The 2 main strategies recommended are keep informed
Okay.
and consult regularly.
But wait, why not just ignore them? I mean, if they can't block the project, why spend the time? Isn't intensive management really for the high power folks?
That's a really dangerous path, ignoring them. It's often a critical political mistake.
Why is that?
Because their high interest means they usually possess a huge amount of institutional knowledge. They know where the bodies are buried, so to speak.
Okay.
And they can become incredibly valuable advocates for the project if you treat them well. But if you ignore them...
Then what? They turn sour.
Exactly. They become highly informed critics.
Yeah.
Or even internal enemies just spreading dissent. So by consulting them regularly, you tap into their expertise, keep them on side as advocates, but without spending the massive resources you need for the high-power players.
Okay, so even if they can't sign off, they can definitely shout from the rooftops, positively or negatively.
You bet they can.
Right. So once we've gathered all these perspectives, hopefully reconciled them somewhat, we start creating requirements. Nugget 7 is about quality control for those requirements. What are the 3 pillars of requirements validation? How do we make sure the requirement set is actually correct and complete?
Right. Validation is like the final quality gate before you start building anything. It's really a 3-pronged confirmation process. First, you absolutely have to conduct reviewing. That means checking the requirements against specific quality criteria. Are they clear, unambiguous, testable?
Okay, reviewing. What's second?
Second is testing the requirements. This isn't testing the software yet, obviously. It's testing the requirements themselves, often using things like scenarios and use cases to see if they actually make sense and cover the need.
Makes sense. Reviewing, testing, and the third pillar.
The third, and this is crucial, is ensuring formal sign-off has been obtained from all the relevant stakeholders.
Ah, the sign-off. That feels like the political final step, doesn't it? It confirms that whatever negotiated understanding you reach back in that consider perspective stage.
Exactly. It confirms it's been formally accepted by the people who actually need the solution.
So if they sign off.
They effectively own the outcome, or at least that requirement. It locks in that shared expectation. And hopefully it reduces that constant scope volatility later in the project.
Right, locks it down. Okay, one more before we get into modeling tools. Nugget 8. This is about a really effective technique for getting requirements in the first place. Prototyping. What's its primary benefit? Why do we do it?
Prototyping is fantastic. Its number one primary value is clarifying interface and usability requirements. It's like the visual handshake with the end user.
A visual handshake, I like that. But why is clarifying the interface specifically so critical?
Well, the thing is, prototyping instantly translates all that abstract text in a requirements document into a visual, tangible experience.
Yeah, people can see it.
Exactly. You let stakeholders actually see, click around, interact with the proposed interface really early on. This ensures the solution feels intuitive and user-friendly before you commit to writing expensive code.
Yeah.
It manages expectations way better than any written spec ever could.
Gotcha. Avoids that's not what I expected. Moment later on.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've gathered, refined, validated the requirements. Now we need tools to communicate them clearly, especially to the development team. Nugget 9 is about understanding different modeling languages or diagrams. A BA uses different ones for different jobs, right?
Absolutely. You need the right tool for the right communication task.
So the question is, which two diagramming techniques are primarily used to describe functionality or behavior within a system? What the system does.
Okay, for functionality or behavior, we're looking at the dynamic models. The two key ones here are the use case diagram.
Right. That shows what the system does from the user's perspective, the main functions.
Exactly. And the second one is the activity diagram.
Okay, and that one maps out the how, doesn't it? Like the step-by-step flow of actions, decisions, processes within a function.
Precisely. And this contrast is really important. If you need to show a developer, say, what data the system needs to hold and how it's structured.
You'd use something different?
Yeah, you'd use a structural diagram, like an entity relationship diagram, an ERD, or maybe a class diagram if you're object-oriented.
Okay.
But if you need to show them how the system behaves, how it responds, the processes it runs, then you absolutely need these functional models like use case or activity diagrams.
Got it. Function versus structure. Use the right picture.
That's the key.
Okay, finally, Nugget 10. This closes the whole loop. We often think, maybe assume, the project's done and dusted when the system goes live.
A very common misconception.
But the full business change lifecycle, it demands more, right? We're talking about the phases of deployment and, crucially, benefits realization. What are the three key activities involved right there at the end?
Right, the project definitely isn't over at go live. That's almost just the beginning of the real change. So the three essential activities are, first, obviously, implementing the solution itself and any necessary infrastructure changes. That's the actual launch.
Okay, step 1, launch it.
Step 2, conducting training and providing support for the end users.
Yeah.
You have to make sure people can actually use the thing successfully. Adoption is key.
Training and support. Makes sense. And the third one?
The third one, and this ties all the way back to Nugget 3 and those tangible benefits we talked about, is you absolutely must be measuring and monitoring the intended business benefits after the solution is operational.
Ah, so checking if you actually got what you paid for.
Exactly. If you promised, say, $20,000 in annual cost savings.
Like in the example.
Yeah. Then you have to actually track it for, say, 6 months or a year post-launch to prove those savings really materialized. Did the needle actually move?
So that post-implementation monitoring, proving the value was actually delivered, that's the true final test of success, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And if you think about the bigger picture, it validates the entire effort. If you skip that final monitoring phase, you never truly know if the whole initiative, from getting traceability right at the start to managing stakeholders to getting sign-off.
Everyone listening, for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Before we wrap up, though, maybe something to chew on, a provocative thought perhaps.
Go for it.
Okay, so we learned that soft systems methodology, SSM, is used back in that consider perspective stage. Its job is to integrate conflicting stakeholder views.
Right. To find common ground.
Okay. Then later, requirements validation absolutely requires formal sign-off. So here's the question. Does that final sign-off truly represent a single unified business vision? Or is it maybe just a hard-won, negotiated agreement? A document that reflects the maximum common ground that was achievable between all those highly conflicted parties, including maybe those low-power but high-interest folks we talked about.
So is it true consensus or just the best possible compromise?
Yeah. Think about that political reality behind formal requirement approval. Does that inherent tension, that difference in perspectives, ever truly disappear from a project? Or is it just papered over by the sign-off?
That is definitely something to mull over. The reality versus the process.
Exactly.
Okay, on that note, we'll leave it there for this deep dive. See you next time.